Welcome to this month's episode of Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones, and I'm the chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
My name is Stacey, Leibowitz, and I'm the Commission Secretary.
Behind the camera today, we're also joined by fellow Commission member Jeff French and two kids from the Greater Lawrence Technical School's Graphics Communication Shops, Josh Robos and Carly Jones. And last but not least, we've got Brian Frazier behind the camera from North Andover CAM. And today's special guest is Debra Freed, Executive Director of Paralyzed Veterans of America's New England Chapter. Paralyzed Veterans of America, why did you, before we get into anything else, why did you get involved?
2004, between 2001 and 2004, I've been unemployed. I thought law school would be a good fit. It didn't work out. So after my only year of law school, I couldn't get a job. I didn't want to be a professional student, and I didn't want to be a professional babysitter. My sister-in-law lives a mile from our house. She had two little ones, so she would ask for help. I didn't have a problem with babysitting. I just didn't want to do that long term. And so depression started to become a problem. And the VA has a special spinal cord injury unit on A2 in West Roxbury. And so I was due for my annual exam, top to bottom, inside and out. And back then, you had to go to each of the departments, rehab medicine, pharmacy, blood work, radiology, you had to go. So rehab medicine had this poster for the National Veterans Wheelchair Games 2004 in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been to St. Louis, the airport, that's as far as I've ever gotten. Okay. So I really wanted to go. And you had the New England chapter's policy was you had to be a member in order to participate in the games. So I call up the chapter, and I got to speak to the chapter president, the late Ken Medeiros, and I still always say, this is your fault. And so we talk, and he goes, well, let's see if you can be a member, put in the application. So I got put in the application and met him in person, and we talked. He goes, so what do you do? And I said, nothing. And he goes, no, seriously, what do you do? And I said, that's what I do right now, nothing. I need something to do. Come by the office. I'll find something for you to do. Okay, fine. Come by the office, and I started showing up like every day because it was something to do. Right. So he turns around, and he goes, because I got my membership back, and I get ready, fill out the application to go to the vet games and stuff, and I start hanging around and stuff. He goes, this was early January, and so early February he says, would you like to go to Washington, D.C.? And I don't have any money to go. And he goes, no. He goes, we'll pay you away, you pay it back. No, you don't understand. 3 years of unemployment, we are so far in debt. And yes, I get, I'm one of the lucky ones in a lot of ways. I get disability compensation for my injury. It's an active duty injury, not combat. And so, but it wasn't a lot of money back then. And so I said, no, you don't understand, I couldn't do it. He goes, we'll make payment arrangements. And I started to cry because I was really embarrassed. And he goes, no, don't cry. And I made him feel bad. And so he goes, no. He goes, we'll take care of it. He goes, this is the way business works. This is the way sports works. Okay, fine. So we go to Washington, D.C. It's Advocacy and Legislative Week. Paralyzed Veterans of America has a week-long program. You have 2 days of training, lesson being brought up to speed on different laws and what's going on in Congress. And then you have 2 days of visits to the Hill. Bam, bam, bam. Go here, meet this one, go there. Go from one side to the other. Go. All week long, you're just moving. So we come back, take a week, and he calls me in his office and he says, so what'd you think? Well, now it's my turn. And I'm like, and I'm trying so hard not to smile. And I look down and I said, well, Ken, I think you got a problem. And his face just fell. It's like he was hoping he got somebody new. And I couldn't help it. I'm like, I liked it. And his face just lit up. He goes, really? I said, I think you're in trouble because I liked it. And so from 2004, I've been to Washington, D.C. a total of 18 times in 14
Wow,
years.
that's great.
I started out as a volunteer. And with PVA, if you're not familiar with veteran service organizations or even the state, Massachusetts is I believe, the only state in the country that has a veteran service officer for every city and town. And there's 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I know we have one here in
Right,
Massachusetts.
and they may share duties or share towns depending upon the situation, but we're the only Commonwealth that has that. We're the only state that has that, and so most of the veteran service organizations, the primary ones, also have the same thing. So that being said, I was able to get my veteran service officer, looked at my case and said, "This is what we can do for you. Being unemployed for over 3 years would allow me to get what's called temporary unemployment, disability compensation, which would raise my level." And then just before I met Ken, I had applied for SSDI. So that's federal money, and it's
You've
all-
obviously earned it.
Right, and so I've worked a long time and stuff. So I have all of that, and he offers me a job.
Ooh.
Amazing.
So
That must have been
here-
a real booster to your ego
Yeah,
after
that's
everything you
amazing.
had been through.
It was. And so the situation is this: you can only keep that level of money
Right.
for so long.
Yep.
You either
Yep.
keep that or you take the job. This is a very personal thing, and what I want people to understand is that it was my quality of life decision. Yours are yours, yours are
Right,
yours,
right.
theirs are theirs.
Right.
So this was my quality of life. I took the job for a lot of reasons. You all work, my family works, my friends work, my partner works. We all pay taxes. This is my way of giving back just a little of what I was starting to get or
Right.
what I've gotten over the years as well. And so I took the job. I'm not going to lie, I got to keep that money, the other extra income for a year, and it helped bring us back up to speed and everything. But, over the years, government relations, I got the first job as the government relations director, and then in 2012, Ken had unfortunately passed away in 2008, and so it just, for some reason, became my responsibility to run the office. The chapter president, the board is run by volunteers, and the chapter president at the time was finishing up his education, and other board members were doing other things, so it fell to me. And so the choice was I could stay on the board as a board member, even though I was an employee, or I could leave the board and move up as executive director. Paralyzed, the national organization made some rule changes for chapters, and that was one of the rule changes. Even though I was a chapter member, you couldn't do both.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I chose to be the executive director, and I've been formally the executive director for since 2012, so for 6 years.
Now, you obviously
great.
served. Where, Army, Navy,
Air Force.
Okay.
Don't ask me how I managed to get the Air Force. Believe it or not, I didn't realize you had to have the best grades for Air Force and Coast Guard. It goes
Really?
Air
Oh,
Force,
interesting.
Coast Guard, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Navy, Army, and Marines
Wow.
for grades. And so the first recruiter I went to, this was the 1980, and of course things were not going well in my life at the time. I was going to be 23, and it's one of those things where I think I can run away from my problems. No. So first place I go is recruiter's office was Air Force office, and I walk into the door, knock on the door, and their doors were open back then, and walk up to the door, and gentleman sitting behind there, he's a tech sergeant, he has 5 stripes, and he says, "How can I help you?" And I said, "If you're going to make me a secretary, I'm leaving." And he goes, "That's a good thing." And I said, "Yeah, for who?" And of course he starts to smile, and I'm not smiling, I'm not. And he goes, "For both of us." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come on, sit down." 4 hours later, here I am, putting my name on the paperwork because I qualified. Don't ask me how, but I did. So I spent, my basic training was in Lackland Air Force Base, and then 16 months in Loring, Maine, when it was a SAC base, and then 30 months at Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, Japan, where I suffered my 2 injuries, 2 back injuries, and I broke my L2. Usually your L2 is supposed to be about that thick. It's down there somewhere. I had 2 surgeries while I was in. I got out on an honorable. One of the things that I do not remember whether I was actually offered a medical or not, and I was afraid to take the medical because I wanted to go back to work. I was 28 years old. I wanted to be able to go to work. Again, a quality of life issue for me. And so I get out. 6 months after I get out, I have my 3rd back surgery. I could still walk back then. I can walk now in small spaces. Unfortunately, over time, my spaces have gotten much smaller over time. And we're actually in the process of renovating my house for that reason. But they, a lot of people have asked me recently is like, would you still recommend the military? Yeah, I would, because it is an education. While they're great young people, and I'm sure they learn a lot, but it's an education you won't find anywhere else.
Right.
There's also a level of camaraderie that while in school you have one level, this is very different. Right. I actually reconnected with 2 friends I haven't talked to in 30 years. Wow. One lives in Maine, the other lives in Texas, through Facebook. And I have a few more. I do need to take a sip because medication
Don't worry about
messes me up a little bit.
Well, I think this
Feel free to keep it right on the...
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I left my water bottle in the car too.
Don't worry about it.
So, but would I recommend it? Yeah. And I get ragged on all the time because everybody says, oh, the Air Force, it's like, you had it easy. Yes and no. We had the better of a lot of things.
Okay.
Stationed in Okinawa, the Marine groups, I have a lot of women Marine friends. We played softball. I didn't play softball. I was a scorekeeper. I couldn't play after my injury. And so we have a lot of Marine friends, Army, played softball together. And we had new barracks, and the new barracks were 2 to a room. We had our own shower, our own bathroom, 2 separate beds, 2 separate cabinets, and some of my Marine friends would come over and say, who gets to live here? Me. It's like...
It's like living in the college dorms to some degree.
Almost. And it's like, well, we thought it was for E6 and above, and it's like, no, they actually have to get permission from the squadron commander to live here if they're single. And so, we had the better of a lot of things. But I will say this, for whatever it's worth, the Marines still have the best dress uniform ever. I am so jealous about that.
So each branch has their own special.
I know. I'm kind of partial. Tom Cruise.
Yeah. So and my kid sister, so funny. I love I have 4 sisters, 2 older, 2 younger, and the youngest one is named Donna. She goes, "I'm going in the military." No, you're not. It's like, Donna, I love you, but you won't make it. And she's like, why? Because you got a big mouth. She goes, yeah, but I was raised by Grandpa. It's like, Grandpa's a pussycat compared to what you're going to do. Trust me on this. So she applied for the Air Force. She missed the test by 2 points, and she could either wait 6 months or the next one was the Navy.
Yep.
So she chose to go in the Navy. She did 15 years. And
Good for her.
Good for her,
and,
yeah, that's amazing.
It was so funny because she turned around and I said, you need to keep your mouth shut. You're going to have someone stand 2 inches from your nose with 50, 100, 150 people watching just so that person can yell at you because you forgot to button a pocket. And she's like, you're kidding, right? No. You need to keep your mouth shut. You do that, you'll make it. I get my first postcard from her after basic training. I did it.
Good for her.
That's great.
15 years.
That's
she
great.
did 15 years, and
Good
so
for her.
one of the things I'm proudest
That's
of
great.
is that she made more time than I did. So
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good segue into some of
Yes.
our other questions. So the organization has been around since World War II, and it's also a congressional charter.
Yeah.
So it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about the history of the organization and the services that are provided.
Yep. And many people don't realize that spinal cord injury individuals were left basically to die. And there were a lot of young men who were like, no, there's got to be something more. And of course, that's when they started, building up, medical procedures and things that at least could help individuals stay alive longer. Would they ever walk again? That's debatable. I'll get to that in another minute. But they didn't want to die. So there's actually a facility in Boston, there was one in Illinois, where they created the hospitals. And so Paralyzed Veterans was born 1946 for that reason, for military veterans. And then 1947, if I have my dates right, so I will apologize if they're not, that's when the National Spinal Cord Injury Association on the civilian side was born in 47. And so Paralyzed Veterans came about because, young men didn't want to die. I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie The Men.
No.
It was made in 1957.
Okay.
You might be familiar with the former or the late actor Marlon Brando.
I'm familiar.
Oh, yeah.
How old do you think I am?
Well, you're younger than I am.
Well, that's
Way
possible.
I know. Trust me, you are younger than I am. You're both younger than I am. And so Marlon Brando, they did a movie in 1957. It was actually his breakout movie, and it was a military movie. And they had, if you've ever seen it or if you get it, I hope that you do get a chance to see it, is he's a lieutenant, Army, and of course he gets shot and paralyzed. And they go to the big hospital. Back then the hospitals were not where you had your own room. It was bays of hospital beds. And they created programs. They tried to create swimming programs, basketball programs. Marlon Brando did an outstanding job in actually pretending to be paralyzed to where he climbs a rope and never uses his legs. And basically the movie The Men illustrates the power of resilience in individuals with spinal cord injury, and the fact that they wanted to survive and how they could survive and what they needed to do. And so I take a lot from that. Paralyzed Veterans of America has been around 72 years. It actually celebrated its 72nd convention, of which I have the privilege of going to. The programs and services that we provide are advocacy and legislation, recreation and sports and recreation. We have peer mentoring. We have a What's It Like program. One of our board members, his name is Mike, and he really does a great job when it comes to the What's It Like program, the school. We go, matter of fact, on November 9th, we're going to Milton, and I forget the Cunningham grade school, and we do a program. Kids get to sit in chairs. We bring a couple of extra chairs. They do a mini slalom course. They sit, they play basketball from the chairs. We have programs like that.
Just to open up people's minds.
And to show, young kids, just because I use a chair, that's the only difference we have.
That's one of the reasons
that's
why we're
important.
bringing people on this program, is to open up people's mind.
Yeah.
Just because you happen to be a paralyzed veteran doesn't mean you can't. And you are a perfect example of that.
No. I was never one for sports in school. My foster mother was never one for girls for sports. But now, especially in the chair, there are a lot of things that I didn't get to do when I was younger that I do now. I bowl, I archery, I air gun. Some of the events at the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, my very first one was air guns, archery, bowling, and a couple of the field events. Back then, field events were all separate events. And I'm like, but in school they're not. The field events, javelin, shot put, discus, are considered one event.
Yep.
You can get 3 medals, but they're still considered one event. Several years ago, the VA and PBA, which is co-sponsor of that particular sporting program, changed the rules, so now they're considered one event. By the way, speaking of the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, the 39th National Veterans Wheelchair Games are coming up in Louisville, Kentucky, mid-July. I'm not sure why they're doing it starting in the middle of the week. Usually it runs from the beginning of the week to the end of the week, but mid-July, and they have over 18 different programs. It is also the largest wheelchair athletic event in the world.
Wow.
That's
We have,
amazing.
for
Is
the
it
last-
televised at all for anybody?
It is.
great.
They just started doing live streaming on a number of sports. I have left you some of the national organizations, magazines, our newsletter and things.
We'll make sure to
Yep.
get that out to.
Yep. We take individuals that are chapter members. You have to be a chapter member. You have to be a veteran to participate. And so the chapter provides for half the room. So me, I am not one who shares. I bring my partner as my caregiver and family, and so I have to pay the other half.
Okay.
And that's standard across the board.
Right,
That
right.
isn't just because I'm the executive director. It's for everybody.
Equal share.
Yeah, equal share. And
sense.
we are one of, I was told we were one of 3, I think we're the only one, who still supports what we call long-term care veterans. Brockton, VA Brockton has, Building 8 is spinal cord injury long-term care.
Okay.
Okay, and we were going to have, half of our team is actually from long-term care.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some of the members ended up with some serious medical issues, so they couldn't go this year. But because they're in long-term care, they have no outside caregivers.
Okay.
So the VA allows, some of those inside caregivers to go. We cover all of the rooms for them. They still have the same policy as across the board. Have to share, these are the rules, this is what happens. And so unfortunately, we only had 6 long-term care folks go. But, and they train, by the way, they do train. The VA in Brockton has an Olympic-sized pool. They also have a gym, and every Tuesday and Thursday they have activities. Individuals practice air guns. I don't know if you've heard of boccia.
We actually, excuse me, we actually saw that when we went to the Abilities Expo
Yep.
a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We are actually hosting at the end of April our second boccia and air gun competition with Spalding
great.
Rehab and the VA.
That's amazing.
And boccia for individuals who are quadriplegics who have very, very limited use of their hand. They wear a hat. It looks silly, but trust me, they actually do a great job. They wear a hat with a pole that comes out, a little stick that comes out. They hold the ball on the ramp and move their head, and the ball goes. They can position or get help positioning the ramp. Everyone who went this past year came home with at least 1 medal.
That's
Long-term care,
fantastic.
and
great.
outpatients. We had 11. There were 3 women who went this year,
Okay.
and the rest, of course, were guys.
What do you mean, of course?
Sorry. I know, I am a minority within a minority within a minority in a lot of ways, but
In my eyes, you
Yeah.
are not a minority of any sort.
but the women were really cool. One is a double amputee, and while she can't be a formal member of our group, she enjoys coming as a team member, and so she has to pay her own way.
Right.
She raises her own money. She pays her own way. I wish I could do more for her, but the best I can do for her is provide her a T-shirt and
And she's
team
able to
unity.
participate, which
And-
is
and she
a
gets
big
to
part of
participate.
the battle
Yeah.
right there.
So-
Now,
so-
among the things, if I may interrupt, among the things you had mentioned was you lobby congressional.
We do.
What is one of the things you're currently lobbying right now?
I don't know if you guys saw the news last night, but Heather Ansley, who is the PVA's Government Relations Director's, what's called the Associate Executive Director for Government Relations, was on last night. The Air Carrier Access Amendments Act was passed. It's part of the Federal Aviation Administration's program.
Okay.
So for people like me who can fly, there's a lot of issues with broken chairs, a lot of issues with disappearing
Yep.
chairs,
Yes.
even strollers, not strollers, I'm sorry, special walkers,
Yeah,
right.
the newer ones with the seat and stuff like that, becoming damaged and things like that. It used to be where you could actually, if I wanted to take my hand cycle with me on the plane, they wouldn't charge me. Now they do. That's not considered medical equipment. That's a minor issue, but the biggest issue is being allowed to fly
Yes,
as a
of course,
wheelchair
of
user.
course.
It was actually, if I didn't hear all of it last night, but one of the things airlines are trying to do is charge more for better seating.
They do that, and then the aisles become so
Right.
paper thin that
Right,
can't get
and there is
through.
a standard
becomes
that
an issue.
airlines are supposed to live by for the aisle seat.
Right.
I'm not sure what the focus was last night on the news. I believe it was that airlines can no longer charge disabled individuals the extra fees for having to sit close to a bathroom.
Good.
I believe
Good.
that's what it was for. But that was
Good.
one of the things that we were
But that's the way
advocating
it
for.
should be.
Yeah.
Another
Exactly.
thing for the Air Carrier Access Act is to have an accessible restroom in a single aisle plane in, the large Airbus planes that go across the ocean.
Yep.
There is an accessible bathroom.
Right.
But on a single aisle plane there is not. JetBlue, if you're not familiar with JetBlue now has new planes where their first section is business class.
Yep.
Right,
So
right.
they've changed their seating. The positive for that, to me, is now the extra leg room, they also included another bathroom.
Fantastic.
So,
Good.
if I want to pay for extra leg room, which I have recently, I did a lot of flying in September. The bathroom was actually closer because they've added another bathroom.
Right,
They have the
right.
business class. The bathroom is by cockpit. Business class. Now they have a bathroom, and then they have the bathrooms in the rear. And so when I saw the new planes and they changed my seating, I'm like, guys, I can walk, but depending upon where my seat is, I don't want to have to walk that
Right.
far.
Yeah.
Right.
It was great. It was actually
Especially when you got a
plus.
plane that's
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but Air Carrier Access Act, the ADA, we always work on. There are different rules for federal facilities. ADA doesn't necessarily apply to federal facilities. Section 503, 504
interesting.
apply to federal facilities. So we work with that. Advocacy, general advocacy. I was helping the organization DME Requipment with
Yep.
funding because the budget hasn't come out yet, and so I sent letters to the senators, a couple of senators, or one that's in West Roxbury, even though he's not my senator because I
Right.
live in Framingham. Our office is in West Roxbury.
Right.
And I specifically told him, everybody believes a veteran can get everything. There are differences, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, if my chair breaks down, I need a chair, I might not necessarily be able to get to the VA. Whereas I can call DME Equipment and say, hey, can I borrow a chair? They'll provide me a chair
And then you can
in
give-
the interim.
Right.
I can give it
Right.
back if I want, or I can keep it. One of the things that we are proudest of is that for a long time, do you guys know the difference between a service-connected veteran and a non-service-connected veteran?
I think, but refresh my
Yeah.
memory.
Okay.
This would be good for people to know anyway.
Service connection, like me, is mine's an active duty injury and or a combat injury is service connection.
Okay.
Non-service connection is, I'll use Mike as an example. He did his 6 years, whatever it was, gets out, and 6 months, a year later, has a car accident. Now he's a
Okay.
quad,
Okay,
he's a
understood.
quadriplegic. So it used to be where individuals like Mike had to pay $50 a day for medical appointments, all of his medications, and emergency visits were $100. They no longer have to do that.
Good.
It took us 4 years to do that, but we got it.
Good.
And-
Thank
great.
you.
And
Congratulations.
because a veteran
Very
is a veteran
important.
is a
Yes.
veteran. Do I have a few more benefits than Mike does? Yes, I do.
But you provided my country or our country
Right, a service.
A service.
Yeah.
And Mike did as well. But again, there is that distinction. However, like I said, Mike doesn't have to pay for medical visits anymore. There are different levels of categories. My own father was like, well, if you use the VA, you're taking charity. You have
You
no
earn
that. You're
idea
not.
how that really.
Well, and I think that's what's so important about your
Yes.
organization is that you're providing this education not just to other veterans and the service, but you're providing it to the general public to make sure that people understand that you have all
Exactly.
provided a very important service to our
So
country, and we should be giving back to
Exactly.
help all of you.
You
I
know,
had,
you do
so,
advocacy,
yep.
you do sports, and just things to make people feel good about
Connecting with
themselves.
services.
You're
You've got
mentoring.
connection of services. You're coming out there and you're bringing knowledge to people who
Education.
aren't disabled about what it's like to be disabled, to just make it more aware.
Exactly.
I mean, that's fantastic. Now, how could people get involved with Paralyzed Veterans of America?
Call the office. We have a volunteer program. We used to have a transportation program, and one of our drivers, we had to give up the transportation program because of money or lack thereof. And so one of my drivers comes to me and says, well, what can I do to help you out? And it's like, Denise, I don't have anything for you. I can no longer pay you. Program is gone. She goes, yeah, but I can volunteer. I say,
Good for
you know, the best I can give you are your miles, your meals, and whatever expenses you incur
Right.
on behalf of the organization. She goes, that works. She volunteers
That's
for me 3
amazing.
days a week.
That's amazing.
Thank
Oh,
God
wow.
for that, because I would be in such trouble. My bookkeeper had an accident at the end of June and was out for 3 months. So while I didn't do a great deal of the bookkeeping part, whatever I had to do was a less of a burden because of her.
Right.
So volunteering, the VA has a volunteer program. You have to go through a very strict security protocol for the
Understandable.
VA.
Yeah.
And for me as well, as a VSO, I'm now required to do background checks. Because
makes
That's
sense.
reasonable.
because
Yeah.
they-
I think that's very reasonable.
but there are opportunities to participate, to do things. The VA, the recreational therapy and rehab, does a great job in keeping the individuals, especially long-term care individuals, occupied in doing something. They go bowling every week. They have air gun and bocce practice every week. They're doing trips. A lot of the rod and gun clubs will host them. The Cape Cod Curling Club hosted us a couple of times to learn how to curl. That's pretty neat, by the way. Everybody looks at it, it's like you're throwing a rock down a sheet of ice. There's a lot of strategy to that, trust me, if you've ever seen it. And matter of fact, one of our chapter members was on the Paralympic team this last year.
Well, that's
yeah.
amazing.
No,
And
it's fantastic because, some people think of, okay, you're in a wheelchair, you have no ability to get around, so what are you doing? You're sitting at home, twiddling your thumbs, watching whatever's on the television, and that's it, and that's your life.
Yep.
And you're showing, no, it's
No.
not.
No, there's so much more. There's so many things one can do. There's I don't know if you've heard, VA Boston puts on a New England winter sports clinic up in Sunapee, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And
great.
I went in '07, and all the guys I know, God love them, and I do love them all, tease me, and it's like, you just don't like the cold. Guys, I was born a Connecticut Yankee. Don't tell me I don't like the cold. That's just not my thing, is skiing.
Yeah.
So, I get to go up and take pictures for the dinner and whatever. But they learn to ski. We had an individual who is what's called an incomplete quad.
Okay.
I never knew there were levels.
Okay.
Growing up, there was paraplegic and quad. That's what I knew. But there are varying levels of each one. This young man is an incomplete quad. He's what's called an upside down quad, which means that his lower half
Okay.
works,
Oh, okay,
but his
yeah.
upper half does not.
Okay.
So, and he doesn't have a great deal of balance, yet he learned to snowboard, and he is now a snowboard instructor.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
that's great.
That's, I mean, if,
Yeah. He was actually close to death when he was in Hawaii. He was I'm not really sure how he was injured, but he ended up quad. He was on basically life support for 2 weeks. He was in a coma. Came out of his coma, and they told him he wouldn't walk, he wouldn't be able to do anything, and it's like, that's up to you.
And now look
You
at what
know,
he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I actually did an interview for PBA racing. I'm a member of the racing team. I don't participate a great deal because I still work, so it's hard. But one of the things I tell people is, okay, you suffered your injury, have your pity party for a week, but now you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, if I don't do this for me, how do I get my family and my friends to understand there is a world out there? And we all need, I need their help, they need my help to understand. So have your pity party and move on, because otherwise, you know.
Well, Debra, you have provided us so much
Yes.
really wonderful information today, and I'm sure we'll be able to post even more information.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we
Just keep
Yep.
it coming to
keep
me,
it
and
coming.
I'll you know, throw it out there. We've got a
Yep.
Facebook page.
We do
and
too. We have we finally started our Facebook page earlier this year. We have our website. We have the national organization. We have a bass trail for guys who want to go fishing. We have 3 events. Matter of fact, they just finished the 3rd event in Maine. You know, so we got some pictures for that. But you can do anything you put your mind to.
And that's, I think, one of the things that we here at the Commission are trying to put out there the most, is that if you have your mindset on something, pick a something, there's a way you can do it. And we're trying to find the tools to help you do it. And you're one of our tools, for lack of a better term.
There is one last point I would like to try and make, if I may.
Sure.
Is that, especially being a commission that you have, if there are issues where you can't get in somewhere, or a restaurant, or a grocery store or something, don't do this, I'm going to immediately file a complaint and then never go back. Go talk to somebody in the store first and say, you know, I had a little bit of difficulty. I recently did a phone call with the National Organization magazine on snow removal. You know, what barriers have I come across? You know, go talk to them. Start that way and work your way up. And you know, call the commission first and say, hey, there's this pole right in the middle of the sidewalk. I can't get around it. What can we do? Can we ask the city or the town to expand the sidewalk a little bit? So because they can't move the pole, they just can't move the pole.
That makes sense.
So you know, start out that way. Don't. My thing is, don't have your hand out and go, I want this. This is the way I want it, and I want it now. Just you know,
the whole idea of collaborating.
right?
Exactly.
And you get a whole lot more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you
both of you.
so much. We really
Yes.
appreciate you taking the time
And
out
thank
to
you
be here
for,
with
you know,
us.
like working with me over the past year. Get
it
the
was
schedule
great.
together, get
was
it, you
great.
know,
So
get
anytime we can help, you know, I will be in touch and
Please.
Sounds
send you
great.
information. And there's a Women Veterans Luncheon, October 20th in Lombardi's down in Randolph. There's also a 5K in Acton to support the organization this year. And then November 1st, there's also a very different Women Veterans Appreciation Day. We started that a number of years ago, separate from the annual Veterans Day ceremony they do at the State House. So.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you again for joining us for this month's episode of Ability Assistance. Thank you again, Debra, from
Thank you so
coming from the
much.
Paralyzed Veterans of America's New England chapter. We'll make sure to get all of your information up on our Facebook page. And as always, if you have any questions, folks, just reach out to Town Hall and they'll make sure to get you in touch with us. But thank you again. We'd also like to thank our folks backstage, or behind the camera, I guess is the proper way to say it here. We've got fellow Commissioner Jeff French, Brian Fraser from North Andover CAM, and my personal thanks go out to the kids from Greater Lawrence Tech. We've got Joshua Robos and Carly Jones from the Communications Department. Join us next month when we have Triangle coming. They are a fantastic organization that just provide a whole
Bunch of services
array
for
of
folks with disabilities and cognitive challenges, and they serve the entire lifespan from childhood on into adulthood. So we're really looking forward to having them on the show.
Exactly. So join us next month. And for all the veterans out there, we're getting real close to Veterans Day. Thank you very much for your service.